started.
Relations. And,
All right, I'll make sure. It sounds like my mute isn't on. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the November meeting of the Madison Astronomical Society. I'm the president of the society, Lawrence Moore, and it's great to see everyone here tonight. We've got a lot of announcements to plow through, so I'll just get to it. First off, I would like to thank everybody who participated as volunteers for the Moon over Monona Terrace last month. I think we had probably about 15 telescopes there. We had 3 of them. We had some friends from the UW Astronomy Club join us and provided a few telescopes. And we had Frank Rinaldo and Jim Lattis give presentations, and then all of the people who donated their binoculars and telescopes were really rock stars. We had a meeting with Misty from Monona Terrace. She's the organizer at Monona Terrace this last week, and we reviewed our feedback from the attendees, and there was really a lot of positive feedback. We also discussed, as you may remember, for those of the volunteers, I sent out a request for some feedback and ideas for next year's event, and we discussed there's a lot of great ideas. So there'll be a lot of great ideas to apply to the event next year, and I especially appreciate that we were able to assign targets to everyone and kind of have an idea of who was doing what or where. So I think one of the things we're going to try to do next year is to actually have signs up. And there's also some, so each telescope there'll be a sign saying what they're viewing, and I also have some ideas for some improved crowd control so that we can avoid having the longest lines in the middle of the central area. So I just wanted to get a quick, we had about 750 total attendees this year, and I also, in case anyone had any questions or comments about this year's Moon over Monona Terrace. Anyone?
My daughter was there. She said she loved it.
Had a great time. I'm glad to hear that.
She likes it better when I'm not there.
Yeah. All right. So no further comments on Moon over Monona Terrace. Tomorrow, Saturday, November 11th, we had what could be, it's getting colder and colder. Could be our last scheduled monthly star party out at Yana Research Station. For those of you who are not familiar with Madison Astronomical Society, our club owns a plot of property. It's in Greene County, in northern Greene County, away from the light pollution. And once a month we have a planned star party there, and star parties whenever the weather permits. But it's looking at the last forecast I looked at, the weather, this clear skies for tomorrow night aren't looking so great, but currently the monthly star party is scheduled out at Yana Research Station tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. and I'll make a weather call by 1 o'clock in the afternoon tomorrow. Any questions on that? All right. Also this week we kind of have some neat new synergy, neat new interaction with the Milwaukee Astronomical Society, the other MAS here in Wisconsin, and their club is just about as old as our club is. We kind of combined forces for a Wisconsin Astro Imagers meeting held online, and the organizers of the the Milwaukee group, they have a site that's a little bit more light polluted, and they're big fans of doing astrophotography, and they've got a lot of great resources. So they've been kind of organizing this group, and they also have been using Slack. So the idea is if you're out imaging in your backyard late at night and you're having trouble, say with using a piece of software to auto guide with a guiding camera, you can get on Slack, ask a question on there, hey, I'm having problems with my auto guider, and you might just get some advice real quick. So if you're interested in joining, they have monthly meetings. That's on the second Wednesday of every month online. If you are interested in getting in on that group, send me an email. I will send your email to them, and they will send you an invite every month. So let me know at my email address if you're interested in that. Jurgen has some announcements. We have just maybe a last ditch reminder about the membership renewal, and we've got some things to sell. I'll pass the mic to Jürgen.
He's the dog.
Yeah, yeah. We really got to get wireless. This is wireless. You can't get rid of the wireless.
First of all, if you have not renewed your membership, please do. There are about roughly a quarter of the people who have not renewed yet. So, a bunch of deadbeats. So, I'm sorry. The other thing is that if you're new and want to join, unfortunately I didn't bring any membership forms, but if you do want to join after, let me know, give me your email address and I'll send you a copy of the membership form. But the other two things are, first of all, in the back, we have the calendars, the astronomy calendars. We have the astronomy calendars for sale, $10. They're the usual good quality. They're published by Astronomy Magazine. Actually, it's Tom Locke Media down in Milwaukee that publishes these. If you want one, I'm selling them back there, $10 a copy, and you can buy more than one. I'll let you go there for a moment. And you can take a look. I've opened this one, so if you want to see what it's like, you can do that. Second of all, we're resurrecting something we used to do a lot of, and that's the hoodie with the Astronomy Society's logo on it. Now, what we've made are 3 of them, medium, large, and extra large. And you can take a look at the back and try one on if you don't mind trying on something somebody else has tried on. The logo is very nice. It's embroidered on. Other than that, it's a hoodie. But it's a branded hoodie. Now, these are probably going to be $35. And we're hoping to put together an order so that if we get them in time, the logo is put on by a company in Middleton, we will be able to bring them by the December meeting, and so you can all have your Christmas shopping done really early. So, are there any questions about either the calendar or the hoodies? If not, I return you to your captain.
Thank you, Jürgen. That's a lot of great news. Alrighty, I'm looking on my list of things. If you're interested not only in tonight's presentation, there is another astronomy-related presentation coming up at this very venue here at Space Place this coming Tuesday, November 14th. Our resident UW Space Place director, Jim Lattis, is giving a talk entitled Wisconsin's Incomparable Comstock, Building the New Astronomy. And the synopsis is about George C. Comstock's astronomical career as the third director of Washburn Observatory, spanning it from the transition from classical astronomy to modern astrophysics. So if you're interested in the history of Washburn Observatory, come back here this Tuesday, November 14th at 7 o'clock. That sounds like a really great presentation. Also, for those of you who might be new to the Madison astronomy scene, the Madison Metropolitan School District has a very excellent planetarium that's been recently upgraded. And they have a presentation coming up, a series of them, this Monday, November 13th and Tuesday, November 14th. That's coming up next week. Monday and Tuesday, both the presentations at either 6 o'clock or 7:30 in the evening. The presentation's entitled We Are Guardians. Join us as we explore the ecosystems of our world, and they are intrinsically connected. With the help of satellites, we examine the links between human activities and climate change. And they also, during the presentations, also give you an update on what to look forward to in the night skies over the next month. So that's coming up next week, Monday and Tuesday at the Madison Metropolitan School District Planetarium there in Memorial High School on the west side by West Town Mall. Any questions on any of the announcements so far? All right, I'll move along. Next month, we will be meeting here again on Friday, December 8th, and we will have the annual kind of holiday festivities. So if people want to bring some holiday snacks and cookies to share, as long as we don't make too much of a mess, and maybe some water or some non-alcoholic beverages, bring them along. And our former president, John Rumble, will be giving a brief presentation, so you want to buy a telescope. So any of those of us that are tuning into our YouTube channel right now, or here, and are new to the hobby, now is kind of an idea to get an idea of what's out there, what's available to purchase for amateur astronomers. Then, after the presentation, say you have a telescope that's been gathering dust or has some sort of problem, or you'd like some help figuring out how to operate your telescope better. We will have many of the longtime amateur astronomers available here to answer your questions and give you advice or give you help. So join us for this very fun event on Friday, December 8th. John, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, you did a good job.
All right. And I have received the reports that out at Yano Research Station we had the whole place dug up and trenched out and concrete repoured, and it was a dust bowl there for a while. But I have reports that we had knee-high grass out there. Kevin, do you want to say a little bit about that?
Actually, the lawn that we have there now is probably the best lawn we've ever had there. So we really like that. We were a little concerned about being able to water the brand new grass out there, but the weather was very kind to us. And I think it's going to get through the winter just fine. If you go out there right now, you will see the grass is cut. I actually had to bag the grass because I wanted to do a push-behind mower, not to make any ruts with the big mower. But it came out perfectly, and we got a nice grassy field to walk on now. I wouldn't be concerned about walking on it anymore. I still want to keep cars off of it because the ground can be a little bit soft. We don't want to cause any ruts in there. So we have some reflecting poles around the area that was dug up, to keep the cars away from it. But I wouldn't be concerned about walking on it anymore, other than the fact that there are a few moles that are also appreciated moving in. But we've got some traps there, so watch for that.
Thanks for the update, Kevin. I totally forgot about the mole traps. Those are kind of a necessity every year, right about in the fall, right around now, or in the spring. So thank you very much for taking care of that. We have some interesting new opportunities for those of us who really dug doing Moon over Monona Terrace, or you missed out on it and you want to do a little bit of public outreach. Next month, the people running Yerkes Observatory these days contacted us and let us know they're looking for people to bring out some telescopes and do some fun star party activities over 3 weekends in December, on December 1st through 3rd, December 8th through 10th, and then on the 15th through 17th. If you think you would like to head down there and take your telescope or your binoculars or even a green laser pointer and have a little fun at Yerkes Observatory, contact me by email and I will forward your email to the event organizer down there at Yerkes. I don't know, has anybody been down there since it reopened? Yeah, it'd be a lot of fun to get down there because it has the world's largest refracting telescope. What is it, like 40 inches or 40 inches plus, and they built it smack underneath the polar jet stream. Unfortunately, back before they knew about polar jet streams, but it's an impressive building and a great historic site. Also, on that note, recently we've been getting lots and lots of requests from parks in the area and schools and other public organizations in the area interested in having members of Madison Astronomical Society give some sort of presentation or to bring out a telescope to their park and things like that. And it's getting to be a lot of requests. So I am looking for any volunteers who might be interested in starting an activities committee where when organizations contact our website, we can send forward the information to you and you can communicate with them about pulling together some of our Madison resources to fulfill their needs. or to throw together maybe, 1 or 2 telescope star party or something like that. So contact me if you're interested in participating in an activities committee. And, in the past, we've also done star parties at Donald Park. And if we got the ball rolling again with Devil's Lake, I haven't heard back from them since the COVID thing happened. But there may be opportunities to do regular events like that through this committee as well. So anybody have any questions on that or have any suggestions? If not, contact me if you're interested in this activities committee. All right. I'm going to see if I have any more announcements on my list of things. I think I got everything. Is there anybody else that has never been to a Madison Astronomical Society meeting before? If you'd like to introduce yourselves, it'd be great to get to know you. Hi, Lawrence. And your name is?
My name is Kat Friedrich. I'm a science journalist.
Oh, great. Great to meet you. You're a science journalist. We might have to rope you into giving a presentation here sometime. Where do you, are you freelance or do you write for a publication?
Both. I'm the editor-in-chief of Solar Today, and then I also am freelancing for Supercluster, which is a space news website, and also Ars Technica and The Bend and Offsite Builder.
Great. It's great to meet you, and we'd love to have you a member. So, great. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Is there someone else here that would like to introduce themselves? All right. Does anybody, we have a couple of minutes, or actually no, that clock there is a little bit slow. It looks like we are at 7:32 and it's time to begin our guest presentation. John, would you like to introduce our guest presenter? Oh yes, you're going to have something.
I'm very good at always forgetting something. The fact that I mentioned that we have the goodies for sale and I was putting together an order now, we will have those again in the future. I mean, we're not, if you don't order now, you still, the possibility will be there afterwards. We're going to leave those 3 here so people can try them on in the future.
All right, thank you for that clarification. You're going to John.
Thank you. I'm John Rummel, former president, and another welcome to you, Kat. I think I talked to you on Facebook, and
The Facebook conversation.
yeah, lured you here with the promise of door prizes, which I was kidding. I'm sorry about that.
That's not why I came.
Tonight's speaker is, as you can see, Kelly Kizer Whitt. I ran across Kelly's name on earthsky.org. Kelly's a writer. She started her career years ago at Astronomy Magazine. She's currently a writer and an editor for earthsky.org, a website that I'm betting most of you have been to, because you can't be interested in astronomy and surf the internet and not eventually be lured into clicking on an earthsky.org link. Kelly's also the author of 9 books. And she says that her twin passions have been writing and astronomy, and she's lucky enough to work in both fields at the same time and get to do a lot of writing about astronomy. So looking forward to her presentation tonight. Please help me welcome Kelly Kizer Whitt.
Get you set up here.
That works. Okay. First of all, thank you for coming out tonight. It's a Friday night and it's clear skies and there's a huge basketball game down the road, so it's nice to see that anybody's here at all. And I might be going to that basketball game just at the end. No rush. I'm not rushing myself here. Okay. So yes, my name is Kelly Kizer Whitt. I have been a science writer for 25 years. I started in the womb. Here is, all right, and speaking of Yerkes, this last year my husband and I visited Yerkes, so this is just a photo we took there. So I think I'm probably a lot like most of you because you're all in an astronomy meeting. I'm someone who's liked astronomy since forever. My earliest memory is being on a blanket in the backyard with my parents, looking up at the sky. We were trying to see meteors. It was supposed to be a meteor shower. As often happens with meteor showers, we didn't see any. But it was just that magical feeling of being out past my bedtime and getting to look at the sky. The first movie I remember seeing, I wish I could say it was Star Wars, but it wasn't. It was 1979, so it was a little after Star Wars. It was a terrible movie made by Disney called The Black Hole, and I loved it. I was 6, so I walked out of that movie, and I turned to my dad, and I said, "Can we go see it again?" And he was so kind, my dad. He was so kind, and he very smartly said, "No." But regardless, I became a big Carl Sagan fan, so I read all his books. I would watch him when he was on TV. I named a stray cat Carl. And then when I was a sophomore in high school, the school sent out a questionnaire to all the students saying, if we had an astronomy class at the high school, would you be interested? And I must have had really enthusiastic answers, because next year, for the very first astronomy class, I was the only junior in a room full of seniors. But I wasn't intimidated. I was, as they say on The Bachelor, I'm not here to make friends. I was there to learn. Regardless, I did make a friend. She was a very nice girl, and she was like me. She was there because she was excited about astronomy. And I would say maybe we could call ourselves, we were nerdy. And as only 2 nerdy girls can do, we got in a fight about Galileo. So like I said, I read a lot about astronomy, and I knew that Galileo's name was Galileo Galilei. And she was talking about him, I don't remember why anymore. What else would we talk about on a downtime in astronomy class? And she called him Galileo Galileo. So I had to stop her, and I said, oh, but actually, that's not his name, it's the other way around. And she came back with a really good argument. She said, we don't call Isaac Newton Isaac. We don't call Albert Einstein Albert. We call them by their last names. And I came back with the argument of, I don't know why, but that's his name. And unfortunately, this was pre-Google, so we couldn't settle it that way. And it was the very first astronomy class, so we didn't even have textbooks. So there was no place to go. So we called the teacher over to finish our fight for us. And he didn't know either. So he listened to her excellent argument and my argument and sided with her. And as you can tell, I've totally gotten over it. It doesn't bother me. So anyway, after high school, I went to Madison, and I was an English major. But I took as many courses in astronomy for the non-major as they offered, because I didn't want to do all the math and stuff, but I still wanted to learn about astronomy. And it was great. I got to study under very important people doing important things down at the university. And then after graduation, I married that man over there. He's the luckiest man in the universe. And so it's Jeremy. And he was going on to law school at Vanderbilt in Tennessee. And so I went along, and to keep up with my love of astronomy, I started subscribing to Astronomy Magazine. I was so thrilled when I opened it up and saw that it's published in Waukesha, Wisconsin. And I was like, oh, that seems like it's meant to be, because I knew once he graduated that we would most likely be living in the Milwaukee area. So, I'll put one over here. That's my hero right there. So we got back to, we did move back to the Milwaukee area, and I started looking for jobs, and I would say it was 2 months into looking for work when back in the day, you looked in the newspaper and you looked in the want ads, and there was an opening for a copy editor at Astronomy Magazine. And I don't know if you know anyone who's an English major, but I already did this for free. every time I read something, as all English majors do, we're correcting the grammar. Like, we're looking for typos, that's what we do. So I was very fortunate they did hire me. And I got to work with, actually there's some of them are still there. Dave Eicher's still there. Rich Talcott, I think, is still there. Bonnie Gordon, Andrea Giannopoulos, Vanessa Thomas. The last two, I think, are right now at NASA doing like writing for Hubble for press releases and such. Anyway, so it was wonderful. I called it my dream job. It really, really was, because I would have done it for free, but they were going to pay me, so it was great. And then I got to move up. I started as a copy editor. I was also photo editor, which was wonderful because then you meet all the people that are doing the astrophotography from all around the world. And I was doing more editing. I did some writing. Actually, this was my first, the new Gallery of Oddball Galaxies. That was my first ever article in Astronomy Magazine. And it was just great people to work with and a great place to really learn how to convey really complex material to a general audience. That's always our goal. That's still my goal at my job today. Like that's, there's no point in telling you the story if it's way over your head and it's frustrating. So I spent some very happy years here, but then I had a baby, and so I decided to stay home, but freelance. So I continued to freelance for Astronomy Magazine and for many other websites, Astronomy Today, Sierra Club, on and on. So I was trying to find, like, what should I have for slides? I was looking for like an old picture of myself and hopefully like maybe in starry gear. I could not find one, but I found that. So that is the solar system Halloween costume there. That's my son Caden when he was 4. And the princess is my daughter Lucy when she was 2. So just a little segue about what it's like to have kids that growing up in a house where everything's astronomy. Yeah, he took to it, you can probably tell. He would get on my computer and I would have like planetarium software and he would like run it years and years ahead and just watch this Jupiter raced around, and he had such a blast being the cute little astronomer that he is. She did not take to it quite as much, but I have like a quick little story I'm going to tell about, well, it shows a lot of their personalities. Alright, it's quick, it's only like a page. Thanks to the omnipresence of astronomy in our home, Caden was obsessed with the planets around age 4. Caden would tell his own space-themed bedtime stories. He would pretend he was traveling the solar system, starting at the sun and working his way outward, naming every planet in order and relating facts about them. Grandma, his traveling companion, liked Jupiter best because of the storm called the Great Red Spot. He even remembered to mention the asteroid belt in the right location in Sedna, discovered in November 2003 and farther out than Pluto. We went to the library a couple times a week, and Caden would check out books on the planets. He would sit right down in the aisle and read them to himself. He was a very early reader. Then at home he would quiz me to see if I knew what the names of the planets' moons were. I had to start reading them with him so I could keep up with his trove of knowledge. Soon the different colored toy balls in our house became planets. And somehow, Lucy's favorite became Uranus. Only to Lucy, it was my Uranus. Not your Uranus, as she apparently thought, but my Uranus. We would ask the kids what their favorite planet was. Katie's would change by the day, but Lucy's was always my Uranus. Caden even tried to correct her. Lucy, it's not my Uranus, it's your Uranus. Can you say that? He would instruct her. No, Lucy's Uranus, she would say. A couple months later, after story time at the library, Lucy was playing with the toys the instructor set out. She was playing with a toy that required her to manipulate different buttons to pop over the lids where Disney characters appeared. She was not acquainted with Disney characters because in my house, you know the planets, but you don't know Disney characters. So I pointed them out to her. There's Mickey Mouse. There's Minnie Mouse. That one's Donald Duck. That's Goofy. And that one's Pluto. Hey, Lucy shouted, where's Uranus? Yeah, they were characters. They were lots of fun. Despite that, they're now 22 and 20. And my son just graduated from UW-Madison. I wish I could say in astronomy. He's a sociology major. Also good. And funnily enough, my daughter is the one who's now taking more after me because she's an English major. And apparently nobody is an English major anymore, but she is. And this photo was this summer. They were at Glacier National Park. She worked there, and she's going to work there again next summer in case anyone's going to Glacier National Park. You should stop and say hi to my daughter. But that setting of Glacier National Park is going to come up in one of my books later. All right, it's foreshadowing. Okay, so when I was freelancing, one of the places I freelanced for was a website called Suite 101, and I wrote everything about like what you see in the sky and what's the new press releases of science. One of the stories I wrote was about weather on the planets, because I like to look at the sky not just at night but also at day. So I love weather and the planets. Perfect fit. I wrote the article, and a woman who works at a publishing company for children's science books saw my article, and so she contacted me and said, would you make this into a children's book? Of course I would. So I won't read the book to you because it is a children's book, but I read it to children at like schools or libraries. I'm just going to point out some of the really adorable artwork inside. That is not my forte, but the story is basically, at the beginning, our little space travelers are getting a forecast to decide where they're going to travel to. And it's just, she has the cutest drawings. And we even use the sun. It almost sounds like when my son was telling stories way back about traveling out. That's kind of what this is too. Talks about solar flares and Mercury. It's hot, it's cold, what do I wear? I really like, let's see. I mean, there's a couple cute ones. Actually, Mars has the a dust devil. Of course, it has the dust devil and the rovers. And then toward the end, we even use Pluto because you got to use Pluto. It's so cute. There's a rover with a little snowman that he's built because he needs a friend. And then on the last page of the book, you finally get to see the meteorologist who's been giving you this forecast. And it is an alien who looks suspiciously like Jim Cantori from the Weather Channel. I love that she did that. I can totally see him in there too. And then if you're like me and a really nerdy kid, there's even like more facts at the end, so you can keep learning. Anyway, that was that book. Available wherever you buy books, I guess. Amazon, whatever. All right. Oh, and it comes in and in Spanish, which I can't read, but my daughter's also a Spanish minor, so she can read it to me someday. All right. So the reason that I put my glasses on. The reason that I called this talk Love Letters to the Universe, it's kind of for two reasons. One is that when I wrote my first novel, which is a different one, I would write, and I'd go to bed, and I'd get up the next morning, and I'd be so excited to go back downstairs because I felt like there was a love letter waiting for me. But then I would get down there and, of course, realize that I wrote it myself, and no one wrote anything overnight, and I have to keep writing. But it's just, it kind of puts you on a high when you're in a good space when you're writing. And then also because the universe is like the ultimate boyfriend. Like he can do no wrong. It's all like rainbows and butterflies. You know, the universe could send a 6-mile wide asteroid to Earth and I'd be like, oh, it's just his nature, it's fine. He didn't mean it. So yeah, I love everything about space. And so it was just a combination of getting to write about something I love about. It's like joining the two things that I love, which is I feel very lucky to do. And I've mostly written really science journalism, so facts. So sometimes it's nice to branch out a little and make things up. And that is what this novel is. It's called A Different Sky. I'm going to read you an excerpt out of this. It's a little long, but just bear with me. I'll read you the back to give you an idea of what the book is about. It is a young adult dystopian book. Here's what the back says. For 3 teens, the end of the world is only the beginning. Jane is on a cross-country train trip with her senior class, including Austin, her former childhood best friend, who is now her sworn enemy, and Brandon, a dark and mysterious troublemaker who has threatened her life more than once. In the depths of the night, a strange and intense meteor shower triggers an apocalyptic event, but the 3 teens are able to escape into the mountains. Jane's passion for stargazing helps them to understand some of what has occurred. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so Jane is probably like you guys were, and certainly what I was like growing up. Like, astronomy is your thing. You know, there's the other kids, their thing is like tennis or Mario Kart. But if someone wanted to know like something about astronomy, they'll come to you, right? So that is Jane. She knows what the phase of the moon is tonight and where Venus is. She knows everything. She does not have a great life. She has a mother who left her. She has a father who's an alcoholic. She has a boyfriend who's not a great dude. But she's about to come into her own here. So I'm going to set the stage, and then I'm going to be reading the astronomy parts of chapter 2, where we have what's called the inciting incident, where it triggers what comes in the rest of the book. The apocalyptic event that is astronomy related. So I'm going to cut out a little of the character building, but it's very important to know in a book. But I know my audience, so I know you're more interested in the astronomy part. Okay, and at this stage, they're on the train with the senior class. It's nighttime. It's dark out. But the lights on the train and the power in the train has gone off. The train is still moving, but the power is out. Okay. Jane looked toward the window and could easily see outside now, without any of the interior lights reflecting back at her. She could even make out some of the scenery, and noticed they were starting to snake around the base of the Rocky Mountains. She pictured the map of their trip in her head and figured that Glacier National Park should be just out the windows on the other side of the train. A streak of white light zipped across the dark sky. A meteor. A little thrill rushed through Jane. It happened so fast, there was no one she could share it with. Somebody would have already had to have been looking out the window. Suddenly, another streak of light lit the night. Jane gasped and reached for Drake. "I just saw 2 meteors," she told him, the excitement dancing in her voice. "No one cares," Drake responded dully and turned back to Todd, who had been leaning over the back of his seat, talking to Drake. "There's another one," Dave called. He had heard Jane and now was peering out the window too. "That was a plane," Todd dismissed. "It was not. It was up there," Dave yelled, and Jane had seen that one too. Some of the other students had also started to see the meteors and were buzzing about the sight. "It's a meteor shower," Drake exclaimed, suddenly interested now that had the attention of most of the kids. "Let's go watch from the other car," he called to the students, motioning to the train car in front of them. They all started to get up out of their seats at once, heading toward the car with the window roof. "It's not a meteor shower," Jane thought. Meteor showers happened at regular times in the year, when Earth passed through old comet trails. There wasn't any known meteor shower for this portion of May. Jane thought about how the skies in this uninhabited part of the country were so dark that more meteors were probably visible than she was used to. But still, 4 in a row was odd. The people in the train car in front of her were silent, and the lights flowing in from the windows were becoming steadily brighter. Jane looked out the window across from her. A mountainside rose up from the train, and she couldn't see the sky at all, but the mountainside glowed with a slightly flickering bluish light. Jane turned her head, as if in slow motion, to look out the window on the other side. Streaks of light were falling from the sky like rain. "It looks like a meteor storm," Jane whispered. "They're very rare. There was one in 1966, during the November Leonid meteor shower. Witnesses said it looked like they were driving into a snowstorm." Without realizing it, Jane was regurgitating information from a paper she'd written her junior year on atmospheric phenomena. Jane was silent, and then they were all still, staring up at the sky. The meteors were coming down faster and thicker, with dozens falling each second. But Jane noticed something unusual about the meteors. They looked less like the pieces of dust that burn up within milliseconds, and more like larger chunks that break up into pieces as they enter Earth's atmosphere. Some of the meteors were crumbling into secondary pieces and leaving long trails. These were not minuscule objects burning up into nothing on impact with a blanket of air. It seemed impossible, but the meteor storm above them grew stronger yet. The world outside the windows was now as bright as day. Jane could see trees and rocks casting shadows. The sky was littered with bursting white lights and smoky, glowing trails. Jane began to wonder if some large space object might have glanced off the atmosphere and broken off a chunk, which is disintegrating above them. The scene above her made little sense. The flurry of activity seemed to be reaching a crescendo, as the streaks merged with other streaks until the sky turned into a white glow. The light was nearly blinding, but, as if an eclipse were approaching, a dark shadow began to swallow the train from front to back. They were passing into a tunnel. Without the train's interior lights, the darkness inside was complete. Jane could still look out the windows of the car behind her and see the glow from the sky cast upon the edges of the tunnel, and then that light was gone too. Now that everyone felt protected inside the tunnel, the train erupted in noise. "That was incredible! Beautiful! I'd never even seen one meteor before tonight." The motion of the train altered after there were a couple train lengths inside the tunnel. The momentum was slowing, and Jane wondered if they'd somehow lost all power now. Or maybe the engineer was trying to stop inside the tunnel, where they would be safe from falling meteors. Even though the students around Jane sounded mostly excited and happy, Jane was sick with fear. The train rumbled slowly on in the darkness until a slight brightening came upon them. Not a day-bright glow like they had left, just a patch of gray out of the inky blackness that signaled they were emerging from the tunnel. As the train slowed toward a stop, the cars began emerging from the tunnel one by one, and a curve in the track allowed them to see the engine and first two cars ahead of them from the window. The train shuddered to a stop, and only the last empty train car was still sheltered in the dark tunnel. In the few minutes that they had been in the tunnel, the sky above had returned to its former state. The only lights were the quiet twinkling of the stars. Jane breathed a sigh of relief. "We missed the end," Brandon yelled in irritation, as if it had been a fireworks show and had been cheated out of the grand finale. Skipping some conversation. While they had been talking, a new murmur was growing among the crowd. Jane had blocked it out until, once again, Mr. Carter called her name. "What?" she barked, forgetting that she was talking to a teacher. "Is that the aurora?" Mr. Carter asked, not acknowledging her bad temper. Jane looked up at the sky again, and her jaw dropped. An orange wave of light was rolling across the sky, like no color and shape she'd ever seen from the northern lights. The orange wave was growing in size, encompassing more of the dark, burying the stars behind it. This time it was a faint orange glow that lit the faces of everyone on the train, and there was a sound. Not a high-pitched sound, not a low reverberating sound, more of a tone, as if someone had struck middle C on a piano and held it, but instead of the sound fading away, it grew louder. "Jane?" Drake asked, waiting for her to answer Mr. Carter. He was also standing in the aisle, but he was farther in, a handful of people away from her. "What?" she said in return. She'd heard the question, but she was buying time. This was not an aurora, but she didn't know what it was, and she had no idea what she was supposed to answer. Pretty soon, the ring of the middle C tone grew so loud that it drowned out any answer she could have given. Jane glanced away from the rippling orange light above her to get a look at what was happening in the train. Some of the students were holding their hands up to their ears to block up the sound. Faces that had been gleeful and delighted by the meteor storm were now filled with shock. Someone struggled to be heard over the single tone. "Can a meteor storm trigger an aurora?" a girl's voice asked. There was no reply. Abruptly, the tone was gone. It took a few seconds for Jane to realize it because her ears were still ringing with the sound. The orange waves continued to roll overhead, filling the entire sky from horizon to horizon. A few voices tried to fill the sudden silence, but were cut short by the sound of screeching metal. The sound ripped through the air, and then the silence again filled the hole. Jane thought maybe the train was starting up, so she leaned over the seats to peer out toward the engine. The darkness and strange orange light seemed to be playing tricks on her eyes. She could see the two train cars in front of her, but couldn't make out the engine. She squinted into the night and realized what was wrong. At the same time, she heard the screaming start. Another screech and rip of metal cut through the air, and in a flash, the first passenger car in line disappeared. Now more hysterical screams filled the air as Jane began to shake uncontrollably. Her brain could not process her options of what she could do because the fear pushed every logical thought aside. She looked wildly around at everyone, and they were all just as panicked as she was. Many of them had not seen what had happened and were simply reacting in terror to everyone else's terror. Seconds later, a third screech of metal brought another chorus of horrified shrieks from the crowd. Jane didn't even have to look to know that the next train car had disappeared. She knew she had to act, and fast, but she couldn't quite figure out how. "Move!" screamed a voice beside her. That simple direction was all it took. She realized she was blocking the aisle in the train car behind her. She turned and sprinted toward the back and off the train and into the dark tunnel where she knew she would find safety. She heard footsteps hot on her heels. She was almost to the door when she tripped over something lying in the middle of the aisle. She felt herself going down, bodies piling on top of her like dominoes triggered to fall. She struggled to get them off of her. Her legs were still pinned, but she sat up just in time to hear a fourth screech of metal and to see the glass-roofed train car, still packed with people, whisk away into nothingness. An image was burned in her brain, that of Drake and Todd lunging toward the opening, their bodies lit by the orange light above, and then the whole car seemed to be pulled upward, like an elevator shooting skyward, and they were gone. Seconds. They still had seconds left to get out of the last train car. Jane tried to push away from the people sprawled around her when one more body, the last to make it from the previous train car, tripped into the pile of people in the aisle. The last student had been running blindly into the dark, this final train car being in the tunnel and not lit by the orange sky, and he had not seen the obstruction in front of them. They were once again pinned together on the floor. The clock was ticking. It was too late. The orange light at the end of the tunnel winked out. Everything went black. So, at that point, Jane goes on the run with the two people who hate her most in the world, and they go into my favorite place in the world, which is Glacier National Park. And some of what they're discussing, they're trying to figure out, like, what just happened. So they talk about it, and of course Jane has a little background, and so she talks about Fermi's paradox. So you probably know what that is, but anyway, I'll just briefly say it. So Enrico Fermi was a physicist who one day was sitting around at lunch, and he just said, "Where is everybody?" And that means that, you know, we have this huge universe with so many places that life could exist. How have we not seen any signs of life yet? So Jane talks about different ideas, but the one that she thinks is most likely is that the Earth has been here 4 billion years, and the universe has been here 14 billion years. So aliens couldn't have always been to Earth because Earth wasn't always here. So in her mind, there had to be a before and an after, and that's what she thinks has happened. And then later in the book, she talks about looking up at the sky. So at the first clear night off the train, she goes out, looks at the sky, and freaks out because it's not like she thinks it should be. Of course, the boys look at the sky and they think, looks like the same as always. But of course, she knows, it was new moon 3 days ago, and now it's full moon. That can't be. She knew that Venus was, in the west, and Jupiter was not in the sky, and now she can see Jupiter up in the sky and Venus is gone. So she knows there has been an issue with the way time has passed. So anyway, that's a hint on this book. It's called A Different Sky. It's on Kindle or on Amazon. It's the old-fashioned way of reading it. So anyway, I'll put the next one. So these are all my books. The first two are the most astronomy-based. The next three are actually a trilogy that's, if you liked, what was the name of that show from the Downton Abbey? So if you like Downton Abbey, it's like that, but set in America. So it's like a historical romance books. And there is some stargazing in those books, but it's just, little plot line. So this is a book about puzzles in the state of Wisconsin. And that'll come up in just a little bit. The next one is a crossword puzzle book that only if you have a really off-key sense of humor would I recommend that one to you. It's fun to make, but it's not for everybody. And then the last two are also young adult books, but these are just modern contemporary situations, nothing apocalyptic except for the fact that nowadays they think every day is apocalyptic because it kind of is sometimes. All right, so this is what I've been doing for the past 3 years. This is earthsky.org, and it's just, I took this screen grab from earlier this week. So at earthsky.org, it's a website that was founded by Deborah Bird. I don't know if you've heard of her. She started the Texas Star Party. She had a radio show called Stardate. It did morph into Earthsky. And she has a asteroid named after her, which is super cool. So at Earthsky, we talk a lot about what you can see in the night sky, because that's a key thing that people are actually looking for. But we also talk about the news. So, well, actually now this is 3. That's been updated since, but now there's 3 asteroids from Ganesh. So we do science stories, and we do what you can see in the night sky. We have a whole team that works just on the sun, and that comes out every morning. They give the update on the sun. We have a NASA heliophysicist that writes that. We do Earth stories too, which is fun because I'm also a big fan of Earth sciences. And we started doing videos because, so since the pandemic, website traffic everywhere is down, not just our site, and we're kind of like a happy go-to site, but people have the news fatigue, so they're really not even turning on this sort of thing. They get their entertainment now from TikTok or places like that. So we've started making videos, and my favorite video that I've made so far is actually about beavers, and you can search for it on YouTube later, but it was in the 1950s in Idaho. People there saw these beavers in the more urban areas, in the suburbs, and they thought them, they're kind of pesky. They're ruining my land, They're flooding where it's not supposed to be flooded. So Idaho, I'll give them credit, they didn't just go out and shoot the beavers. They decided to remove them. And the way they did this was that they took these old surplus parachutes from the war and decided to parachute the beavers into remote areas. And to do this, they had to put them first in boxes But they had to test the boxes because the boxes, they want the beavers to get there and be able to get out, or what's the point? They couldn't be too easy to get out because otherwise this pilot has a plane full of loose beavers running around. So they moved a bunch of beavers out into specific areas in Idaho and remote areas, and now 70 years later, our satellites have looked down at the landscape and can see that the ecology in the areas where the beavers were put is much better than the ecology in other places because beaver dams are important to wetlands. Anyway, that was just my favorite video that I've done so far. Other perks of the job is I am a big reader and I get books sent to me so I can review them, so that's really fun for me. Yeah, okay. So most of the time when I'm writing a story, it's about speed because really whoever gets that story out there first gets the eyes. I think the Google bots go there. So it's mostly just like how fast can I interpret this and turn it over, because there's a lot of sites that just take the exact press release and just paste it and then call it a day. So we're trying to do better than that. And sometimes when I have time to work on a story that's not pressing, then I get to interview people. So one of the people I've interviewed is Avi Loeb. I don't know if you know him. He's usually referred to in more mainstream media as Harvard astronomer because he has great credentials, but he is a character. So like the Oumuamua interstellar visitor, he has said is alien artifact. He wrote a whole book on it, and actually, I'm not gonna lie, I thought the book was good. I just read his second book, which I got in advance, and I like that book so much. But I was very entertained. I think people either love him or hate him. I find him entertaining, and I just don't worry too much about how far. So this summer he was scouring the bottom of the sea near Papua New Guinea, trying to find more artifacts of a different interstellar visitor. But he got in a little trouble doing that because he did not have permits to take what he took. But anyway, he's a character, and every time he has something to say, I get an email now because I'm on his list. But one thing I will say about Avi is, he's at least upfront about it. I think when you really look at astronomy and what people are researching, why do we have rovers on Mars? They're looking for water. They're looking to see, could there have been life here once? When we look at exoplanets or on other stars, what are we most interested in? The ones in the habitable zone. We're kind of all, that's what we're doing. We're looking for life elsewhere. He just is really willing to push that all the way. And so speaking of that, in my group, so we're all remote workers. And we have people around the world, workers from Spain and the UK, Puerto Rico, Canada, Mexico. So once a week, we have a Zoom meeting to just touch base. And ever so often, it devolves into talking about UFOs. And you can kind of see why, because it's you have to cover it. When the congressional hearing is talking about what they now call UAP, we have one guy who's all over that stuff, so he likes to talk about that. For me personally, I am very scientific minded. I have to see it to believe it, and then even if I saw it, I'm going to try and figure out what it really was. So I'm a very skeptical person by nature. So despite that, I'm going to tell a little story. There we go. That's from Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Great movie. All right. This is just kind of a lighter note here to end on. And this is a true story. It is called Unseen Flying Object. Most people who have UFO stories talk about the strange configurations of lights they saw with weird blinking patterns and sudden bursts of speed. They've seen unidentified flying objects. But my UFO was an unseen flying object. Others with me saw the UFO, but it was most memorable to me in that I never even saw it. Back in 1985, I was all of 12 years old. On the night in question, I had been to Madison with my parents and their friends to watch a movie. We were headed home to Sauk City on Highway 12, but first we had to drop off my parents' friends at their farm in the town of Barry. It was summertime and already dark, but not yet 10 p.m. I was in the backseat with my mom and her friend, while the men sat in the front. We had turned off of Highway 12 and onto a country road when someone mentioned a strange light moving above us. The women in the backseat leaned forward to get a better view, and they cried out in expressions of surprise. The mood in the car was electric, and my heart began to race. My dad, who was driving, pulled out over onto the gravel shoulder so that everyone could get out, take a better look. What I remember next are the adults standing on the road, filled with agitation and excitement, talking about UFOs and aliens as they pointed upward at the night sky. And I remember myself in the car that was tipped at an angle into the ditch, hiding in the far corner by the door, except for the light of the UFO that was blocked by the roof of the car from my vantage point. The only light I could see for miles around was the bright interior light that lit me up like a spotlight. Then there was the non-stop bing, bing, bing from the car doors being left open that helped draw more attention to my whereabouts. I was terrified, wrapped in a bright and noisy cocoon on the side of a dark country road, with the adults all pointing and waving and shouting as if to say, "Here she is, come get her." Eventually the adults returned to the car. When my mother saw her terrified little girl wedging herself into the crack between the seat and the door, she burst out laughing. I carried the memory of the night, but not the UFO itself, with me for years and wondered how accurate it was, or even if maybe I had just dreamed it. Then, some 20 years later, I was researching everything I could about Wisconsin to make Wisconsin-themed crosswords for newspapers and a puzzle book that became Badger Brain Twisters. As part of that research, I bought a book called The W Files, True Reports of Wisconsin's Unexplained Phenomena by J. Rath. As I read, I wasn't even thinking about my own close encounter when I came upon the following. The entry for August 2nd, 1985 begins. Around 9:45 p.m., 10 people in a region that spreads from Cross Plains to Blue Mountains saw a UFO moving slowly eastward. It was white, brighter than a star, and projected a beam of light that moved back and forth like a searchlight. One of the witnesses was Rogers Keene. Keene, a teacher at Wisconsin Heights Junior High School, was walking his dog around his rural home 5 miles north of Black Earth. The car in which I was hiding during this time would have been parked on the shoulder of the road a mere 2 miles east of Keene. I don't know what subject Keene taught at Wisconsin Heights Junior High, but he analyzed the situation like an astronomer, noting that the object was about 75 degrees above the horizon and appeared to be the size of his thumb when his arm was stretched away from his body. He watched it for 2 minutes as it swept a beam of light across the ground. It then hovered and zigzagged slowly downward until it was only 20 degrees above the horizon. The light then shrank until it disappeared. Madison's airport and the NWS radar did not detect this object. And even more strangely, on the same night, at the same time, witnesses in 6 other Midwestern states reported similar sightings. So it turns out that my unseen flying object was seen by many people that night, just not me. I hope that the next time there are a bunch of reports of a UFO near me that I actually get to see it too. All right, that is all I have today. So if you have any questions, I'm open to hear. That's from...
Thank you. I have the microphone here,
March.
so you keep in mind we are broadcasting on the YouTube channel. So if you have a question, I'll hand you the mic. Yes, John.
I think you may have partially answered the question, but going back to the very beginning, what high school did you go to where the science department put together an astronomy class in, I guess, the late 80s, early 90s?
Yeah, it would have been 1989. Sauk Prairie High School.
Cool.
Yeah. We didn't have any textbooks yet, but we it was a great class and helped further my love of the subject.
I really love the beaver story. Can I Google someplace that will get me that story? Well, to like over Idaho.
You know, it's not just I want to say, I did the video, but there's also the story at earthsky.org. So yeah, if you Google parachuting beavers,
Oh, okay.
there's a good chance that will come up.
That will come up, okay, I thought maybe beavers over Idaho or something like that.
Yeah.
If there's images, don't look at them.
Don't look at it. Well, you know what this
Come
reminds
right
me
into
of?
Earth Sky and type in.
Thanksgiving is coming up, and the funniest show I ever saw ends with the quote, "And as God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly." You all know what I'm talking about, probably. I will send that along with that one this year.
Anyone have a question? Well, with all the talk about the beginnings of astronomy being some, Mayans or some philosopher in ancient Greece or ancient Egypt or the Phoenicians, it's kind of fun to remember that people before any of them used to go out, look at the stars, look at the constellations, and they'd tell stories. So thank you so much for telling me all of the stories. I have a little thank you gift here for you. As we like to give all of our presenters a little token of our appreciation for joining us here at Madison Astronomical Society. So you get a choice of either a hat or a mug.
Hat or a mug. You know what? I'm going to go with the hat because
Great.
I can wear this when I'm out and people ask me about it.
So thank you so much for being here, and on behalf of Madison Astronomical Society, it's been a pleasure to hear your stories and your experiences, and we look forward to, I have to find out where my notes went to, but we'll be meeting again here next month. What date is it?
December 8th.
We'll be back here on Friday, December 8th, and we will be also hanging out here. The place kind of locks up and closes by 9 o'clock, so we'll kind of want to lock up and head out before 9 o'clock. So until next month, this concludes the meeting of the Madison Astronomical Society. Good night, everyone.